Good morning. Some of you have heard me say this or repeat this again from Hee Kim. And he said it he finished in a letter he sent me in the post-COVID-19 era. We are in the post-COVID-19 era, just America now. We need eternal peace more than ever. Just as Dogen envisioned the constructing of Eiheiji, which means eternal peace. In the 13th century, this is the 21st century. No difference in what has happened in the 13th century than the 21st century. Drought, famine, epidemic, war, social injustice, same thing. And I recall the Chinese have a saying, I don't know who said it, but it says, when human nature is backed into a corner, then it does something. So this may be what Uchiyama Roshi said. This may be the 21st century of the spirit, like it was. I think it was in the 60s. There was a great Reformation or Renaissance happening, and this may be the same thing because we are in such a dire situation. Every year it's a crisis, right? And you can see from fundraising letters that this is a very, but every year, but now is the most essential crisis-ridden time and no different than 13th century. And so what I think, I hope what it does to people, it makes them turn inward, because nothing that was promised outside of ourselves objectively is going to help us. Everything is about objectification. Even myself, when someone had a very close person to me had a very hard time, I didn't really internalize it. I objectified it. And Dharma is about not objectifying, but internalizing it. That out there is not real. It's in here, which makes it real. So it's been proven in the history of humanity by Nagahara Juna and by other great people like Vashu Bangsu, that any argument that is presented has been created by your thinking mind. Therefore, it does not exist. It's nullified. It was a great argument because no one could beat him. And in those days, what was it, 3rd or 4th century Christ era, not only did the scholars or translators read, but they practiced diligently. It's not like this Sunday sitting on Zoom. They broke their bones and practiced diligently. I don't understand why people, when they're trying to learn how to swim. So they read a book, they talk to people how about it, but they never get into the water. Zen is just like that. You have to get into the water. And Suzuki Roshi used to say over and over again, this talk is not about thoughts and things. It's to invite you to find out for yourself what is true. Okay? That's what I want to say to my study group. How can you study something if you don't start swimming? How can you read a recipe and not eat it? That's what we're doing. I mean, the whole media, every politics, and I saw a picture of LeBron James, and it shows him doing Zazen, but he's not doing Zazen. It says some calm, but he doesn't even know what the word calm. In fact, we don't even know what the word calm is. There's that spaciousness and clarity within yourself that's right with you wherever you go, but you just have to see it. It's closer than you think. So I got these notes here, and with a red pen, I like 1, 2, 3, 3A, but actually it doesn't matter what order it comes in because there's no order. Okay, here's an explanation of Zen, okay? So we should be clear that a Zen practitioner should know that Zen is the manifestation of an activity which negates the ego. This is understood, is it? Which negates the ego or the incomplete self. That's the ego. And negates and cultivates the complete self. That's our inner self. It negates and at the same time it cultivates. So these are principles of the universe: negation and cultivation, yes and no, large and small. These are called dichotomies or opposites, but we call it pairs. If it wasn't for the opposites or the pairs, nothing would exist. For instance, what do they say? There's within, like in the Sandokai that we chant, it's the title of it is called Sandokai. This is the Japanese version, and it means the intimacy of the relative and absolute. About the relative and the absolute. About this and that. The intimacy. It means they go together. They are not opposing each other. In fact, we could say they are a pair. And isn't it true, if they weren't a pair, the universe would collapse? Because the universe is based on this principle of opposites, dark and light. So in the Sandokai it says, within light, there is darkness. But do not try to understand that darkness. Within darkness, there is light, but do not look for it. So this is describing the process in Zazen meditation. When you are in deep meditation, this is exactly what's happening. So these seemingly dichotomies, they're opposites. We don't see them as opposing each other. So when we see the activity of the ego or that kind of energy, we don't name it. We're just aware. But this awareness isn't that slight. It's deep and profound. It means when you're aware of something, that something dissolves. I mean, it's that powerful. You have that. So he's saying, Sekito is saying, don't try to understand it. Don't think about it. It's before thinking. Your awareness is before thinking. That's the insight we all have. And then when there's darkness, there is light. But do not look for it. It's there already. The pistachio tree, outside our living room window already has red leaves, if you look carefully. So like when it comes autumn, boom, red, orange, bright, blazing. It's already there. Everything is already there. So let's see. That was note 3A. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I want to talk about Mother's Day uh, at the end of this, because I've never felt closer to my mom than at this at this very late age now. At least I can verbalize it. But so maybe I should just say a little bit about our meditation practice and what I learned over the years. Dhyana, which was even before Zazen, it was one pointed focus, one pointed. That means I thought that was Zazen. And so when I went to the city, I would count the stories on the buildings, see how to test my concentration and one pointedness. And so you completed 108 floors. So what? It didn't answer. It didn't complete the self. It didn't fulfill the self. So I knew something must be missing. There must be something else. So like in the Heart Sutra, which we chant every day, it says something about the five skandhas. And you know what the five skandhas are. I will not repeat it here. You will have to find out yourself. But once the five skandhas interact while you're sitting, it creates the ego. It's as simple as that. But you know, when in Zazen, they're suspended. And when they're suspended, we aren't doing anything. All suffering, all thoughts, future, past, everything does not exist. We don't need to think. So when that happens, that means you're liberated. Thinking is grasping or pushing away. Thinking is getting. In fact, Uchiyama Roshi said something about, I thought it was great, like in one of his poems, we are a civilization of just inhaling. I never heard that expressed before. We are a civilization of, we've been taught to inhale. School, our fathers and mothers, because of their ignorance, culture, tradition, just inhale. What does inhale mean? It means to take. It means to get. It means to hold on. It doesn't mean to give compassion or let go. It's keeping. You're keeping all that stuff here. So it's important in Zazen, breathing. Breathing first, because breathing controls the thinking mind controls the body. We have to know how to breathe through this nose and the nose below your belly, 3 fingers below your belly, the tanden. And so when we observe the skandhas, they are meant to scatter disorder, chaos. When we are aware of that activity, we do not name it. We don't do anything. The awareness dissolves it and comes, another translation is the 5 bundles. there's a bundle within the scattering. There's light within darkness. It's there. So the bundle comes and it holds it together. And when it holds it together, it dissolves it. And what does it dissolve? It dissolves your small self. That's Zazen. And that's liberation. And that in our study group, they asked, what is, does it move heaven and earth? It moves. It moves heaven and earth. That's how powerful and strong and deep it is. Oh, Vashubandhu. I should say something about him. And Vashupanzu, we should know that he's one of the great authors, scholars, and practitioners of meditation, of Dharma. And let's see, earlier, the story about Buddha, and when you look at Buddha's life, I mean, he was a person that experienced deep tragedy. He wasn't just on a high plateau or high place. Like when he was born, his mother died, and actually her name was Maha Maya. That's kind of interesting. It means great ignorance. It's but when something is great, that's great. When something is small, that's small. This is the Zen world. There's no comparison, which is better. Small is beautiful. Schumacher said, small is beautiful, but he doesn't know that great is great. So when we were sitting in Zazen, that's exactly what happens. It dissolves the dichotomy, which is actually just the opposite. It dissolves, the activity dissolves, and we see things as it is. That's unique term in Zen, and also in Kagyu lineage in Tibetan Buddhism. That's the only two lineages. We see things as it is because there's no longer any projection, any idea, any thinking, any discrimination. When I look over there, the wall is just the wall, as it is. So small is small, beautiful is beautiful, big is big. It's seeing as it is, right at that moment in time and space. It's beautiful. So as it goes on, Vashubanzu is, I saw his name, it says Seishin. And the kanji for Seishin means, sei means something like world. And Seishin means intimacy or generation or friendship. That was Vashubanzu's name. And he wrote the Abhidharma. And Abhi means Uttama. Uttama means highest or deepest. Uttama. I think we have something, Bodha Boshi. Bodha Boshi. It suddenly, very steep, suddenly, very deep. It has that feeling, or it simply pertains to the Dharma, Abhidharma. And it's, let's see, it was 4th or 5th century. And in those days, they wrote in verses. I thought that's kind of interesting. They didn't write in paragraphs like we do. In fact, the Genjo koan is written like poetry, one line, and the next line, it's a pair. They go together, like the left foot and the right foot. They in verses. So he wrote, what is it? Probably at least 900 verses, and or 600 verses and 909 chapters. And you can actually, you can even look it up in Google. Google Vashubanzu, his 30 verses. But when you read it, you won't understand it. It took me years to understand it. And that's one thing that I feel honored to even give a talk and people listen, is that I'm studying it and I don't understand it. But as I talk about it and think a little bit about it and practice the Zazen, you begin to understand it, and you feel really excited because it's the truth. Okay, so Oh, so there was a kind of story about Buddha. He was teaching the Abhidharma to his mother, who was Maya, and she died, and he went up to heaven and continued to preach to her of the Abhidharma. And it's a kind of analysis and psychological process of how you enter into liberation. It's pretty how you enter into the complete self. So let's go into Abhidharma, and I'll spare you because there are 30 verses here. I just do a few, okay? Okay. In fact, let's see. Number 20. Oh, this is great. This is what I was just saying. Whatever range of events is constructed by whatever construction, whatever you think. It doesn't matter if you're spiritual or not spiritual, whether you're a policeman or a milkman. Whatever range of events it constructed by whatever construction is just the constructed. Its nature is non-existence. It's not real. Because we're not internalizing something. We're constructing something we are projecting something outside, but it hasn't reached the inside. When you construct something, you make it outside of yourself, right? Okay, verse 21. The nature of interdependent is born from discernment of conditions. It all comes from a condition, the nature of interdependent. The absolute is the state when the interdependent is separate from the constructed. They are different from each other, the relative and the absolute. The conventional world, we say, Sonoma Mountain Zen Center, that's the conventional world. That relates to people. And then you have the vertical world, the absolute world, and that's Genjoji. That's the heart of the place. Sonoma Mountain Zen Center is just to identify where we are, okay? Verse 22, are you ready? Therefore, it is neither different nor non-different from the interdependent. It is neither different nor non-different from the interdependent, just like impermanence. God, what does that mean? Therefore, it is neither different nor non-different, neither of them, from interdependent, just like impermanence. And it says here, when the one is not seen, the other is not. And that's beautiful, because here's an example of that. This is the process of Zazen. When there is this, the ego, there is that, the objective world. We are separate. Two entities. There's no interdependence. We are separated. When this appears, the ego appears, that appears. Our incomplete satisfaction of the world and ourselves. When there is not this, the skandhas are suspended, or the dichotomies have been dissolved. There is not that. When there is no longer this person, this being, there is no longer that objective world. So what it means is that objective world is internalized. It's here. And then the tree is the tree, and I am I. We are different. But through that negation, comes the affirmation. Hey, how about that for explanation? Yeah, yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, I don't know what I'm saying, but there it is. Yeah, that's true, huh? It makes sense then. Okay, and a little bit further. I mean, it's just so exciting because it's about the truth and how we've been deluded by media. There's, media. Uh, it's just the same thing over and over again. Nothing is different than 13th century. It's just more mechanical and technology is involved. But there's a thing that says it, because the unknown or unconscious thing what media does to you is disrupts your concentration. They don't want you to concentrate too much because you might not look at media anymore. You might know how valueless and degrading it and demising it is to us human beings. We are human beings. So there appears, I saw this, it appears on your screen that, oh, and in a circle or a drop of water, a little going around. Now you will meditate or be quiet or be calm for 20 seconds. And they go, and everybody, I mean, that is, we should not be fooled. I mean, how dare people say that to us? We are human beings. We have dignity. We have nobleness. Okay, verse 23. Oh, that verse 22 was about if I do not exist, the I meaning the ego, that doesn't exist as the objective world. We're separate. Okay, I skip a little bit. Verse 25. It is the ultimate truth of all dharmas. Dharmas mean things. It is the ultimate truth of all dharmas. It is also suchness. That's a more positive way to say emptiness. It is the suchness of all things. It is the emptiness of all things. You have a plus, you have a minus, describing the same things. It is the stuff of all things. Since it is always things as they are, that is why it is mere manifestation. But it's not, it's because, okay, I read this again. Since it is always things as they are, that is why it is mere manifestation. It is what we see, what appears, but it's not real yet. People just have one side of the coin. The other side is the liberation from one side. We have heads and tails. But Suzuki Roshi said there were two sides of one coin. Okay? So again, verse 26, as long as consciousness does not dwell with the nature of mere manifestation, the residues of dual grasping cannot come to an end. As long as we're conscious of anything, our dual conscious means ego produce of anything, dual grasping, the dichotomies can never come to an end. We can never be satisfied. In fact, I think one time Suzuki Roshi said, the reason for your anxiousness in your life is because you avoid the Dharma. And not just the idea, but the practice of the Dharma. And this is not just for Buddhists. I mean, maybe it should be for Buddhists because maybe they are avoiding it also within the practice. You know? And then again, verse 27, Bhashabhansu says, although there may be the perception that that's, consciousness of this perception, all this is mere manifestation, because this still involves an object of perception in front of it. In front of me, they're just all objects. I'm conscious. The consciousness of that perception is just mere manifestation. It's not yet reality. It's mere only manifestation, appearing. So if that's the case, it does not dwell in mere that. This is the 30 verses on the teaching of mere manifestation. So as long as that happens, all this is just mere manifestation. All you're seeing is what's appearing. It's entertainment. It's not real, but we think it is. It does not yet really dwell in mere that meaning as it is. Okay. So 28. But when mind no longer grasps an object of consciousness, it will stop at mere consciousness. That's why they call this consciousness only. It doesn't go any further. And when it doesn't go any further, you see things as it is. No more projection, no more comparing, no more discrimination. In fact, Uchiyama Roshi is always saying Buddha Dharma means before discrimination of the subject and objective world. So if, this is the big if, you can stop before mere consciousness, for without any object to get, to grasp, there's no longing to get, to attain, to provide, to accomplish. There's no more. And so if there's no more, if there's no more dual grasping, you're liberated. You have just liberated yourself. Isn't that great? But the thing is, you have to do it. And actually, after you're liberated, you're still, it's infinite, because it's not man-made. It does not end. Like, we don't go to heaven and we don't go to nirvana. Oh, you go to nirvana after you're dead, because that means fully extinguished. So it's a wondrous world. There's no end. When there's an end, that means it's man-made. But that's why Einstein liked this so much, because this is about the Dharma. It's about the ultimate reality. It's about the cosmos. So I'll just verse 29. It is now without discrimination. See, the discrimination is what makes us get in trouble. It's before, prior to. Now, when mind no longer grasps at an object, it will stop at mere consciousness without any object to grasp. So there's no longer grasping. I'm sorry, verse 29. It is without discrimination. It means it's without attainment. You're not trying to get anything. When you try to get something, you always fail. Isn't it true? It's better not to try, but you still have to be in that place that you know you don't have to get it. because you already got it. That's why. You're trying to get something you already have. Isn't that right? That's why there's no attainment. It's not outside yourself. It's here. When the double incapacity, when the double, this is a double whammy, that when the double incapacity, the subject and object, is abandoned, is dissolved, is forsaken, is given away, the transformation at the base is realized. You have entered the Dharma. Isn't that great? So this is yeah, so this, I just want to end this talk with mother. And I haven't thought about my mother much, because actually I look more like my father, and my father was a Chinese doctor and he was more educated, and my mother was more of a peasant woman, and she worked really hard for the family, and so I was born in Santa Rosa. I'm a true native, but I grew up in Palo Alto, which predominantly there was a white culture, and you really felt the difference between being poor and being wealthy. And Stanford hadn't exactly become a great university yet. It was called the Farm, and there were yeah. Anyway, I won't. Yeah. So it was 19. It was 1935. See, that's 86 years ago. Okay, and that's where I grew up. And with my with being minority, and there was a lot of discrimination. So my mother had to work because my father was discriminated against because he was doing something. Chinese medicine was just superstition. So uh, they made a law against him that he couldn't visit any sick people. So all the sick people had to come to him. He couldn't do house calls, and so uh, that happening. Not many. He didn't have many in those days. Many people who believed in Chinese herbs and things like that. But anyway, as a young boy, I had a chance to meet some of the patients, and they were, of course, not regular people. They were bohemians. So already I was introduced to a kind of subculture within Palo Alto. And so because my father's business was not popular, my mother had to go to work, and she worked in the fields like a peasant woman. And I was trained in those fields. It was aster fields, acres and acres of asters. And my job, I think I was 13, was to pick the buds off of each stem. And the row was, say, maybe it could be at least 25 feet long, and there were 4 plants. And you would sit on a little chair, a wooden chair, and you would bend over and pick as fast as you can all the buds off, so that the main stem and flower would, be large. And after you finish one side, you turn and did the other side, and that completed one row. And you look down the field, and there was acres and acres, and you were out there picking. So it's kind of interesting. When I was there, what I did to humor, I what are you going to do out there for 12 hours a day, 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock at night, by yourself? What are you going to do? So I made up stories to to humor myself, to along, and then in between the stories, the ice cream truck would be coming down the road, but we couldn't go out. And I prayed for rainy days because that means you didn't have to go to work. And you came home smelling like the fields. And that's actually, I think that was my first Zen training. 12 hours a day, and the goal was that you could use some of the money to buy something special for yourself, like a cashmere sweater or something. But anyway, my mom was working out there and kind of managed me. So when I was kind of loafing, from 50 feet, she could hit me with a mud claw. She was that she was that accurate. So I had to really pay attention and pretend, at least pretend I was working. But in the mornings from my bedroom, I can see the a mother with her doe, and I've never seen a doe this small. It was the size of a dog, but he or she was just jumping all around, vigor, just running here, running there, spontaneously without fear, while the mother kind of just watched. And then as the mother went down the hill, of course, the little doe, so small, would always go towards her. At the same time, there was in the news, it said there was some osprey, white, pretty large birds, white with black markings, and they were nesting high above us in the madrones, the forest behind our house. And of course, they were bringing food to the baby chicks. And in our days, there was no Gerber's baby food. We fed. It was mouth to mouth feeding, just like the birds. Wasn't that true? Do you remember? It was mouth. There was that intimacy, mouth to mouth feeding. So, so like mom, one time, she was, I think I had a cold, and we used to have these very small vials. We call it in Cantonese guyu, and when you put it in your mouth, it was like peppermint or spearmint. It had that kind of taste to it. Anyway, you just put a little bit because it's very strong. She was putting it, I was lying in bed, mom was putting it in my mouth, and she accidentally lost it. And she put the whole thing, all the guyu went in my mouth, and I was coughing, and I looked at mom and she was laughing. I felt like I was dying, but actually I got healed. And mom always told stories in Chinese to the people, made them laugh. And I remember that very much. And then I thought of mom, conception, the caring of the baby to be, the birth, the nursing, the intimacy of breastfeeding. Uh, I hope they still continue that instead of just using the bottle. But that's why people are so close to their mothers. I mean, even George Floyd, before he died, he called out for his mother. And I'm thinking, like, what we don't know, that we all have the same mother on a larger scale. We are from the same non-thing. We all have the same mothers. How can we fight each other? How can we steal from each other? So, when they say Mother's Day, I'm beginning to think more deeply about it, which is going to be tomorrow. And so you have a mother, you don't have a mother, but you have a great mother. But it's really something. Her giving and her caring and her nursing. each one of us, because Kuan Yin, the Bodhisattva, she's our mother. You know, that's how Buddhas are born, from Kuan Yin, Kanzeon. Okay, so have a wonderful day today, and remember mom tomorrow. Okay, are you gonna do something with mom? Yeah, thank you very much.
Without